Das ist myfish.org aus Freude an Aquaristik. Ich bin gerade wieder live auf der Interzoo und ja, neben mir sitzen zwei sehr interessante Menschen. Einmal der Leandro und einmal wieder der Stefan Hetz. Und der Stefan Hetz hat an den Leandro ganz viele verschiedene Fragen und das wird richtig spannend. Also bleibt auf jeden Fall dran. Stefan, ich übergebe mal das Mikrofon an dich.
Ja, wir haben Leandro hier. Leandro ist ein Professor aus Brasilien und weil dieser Professor aus Brasilien kein Deutsch spricht, machen wir das Interview in English. So we start over in English. Oh, hi Leandro. I really enjoy that you joined us at Interzoo. So we were having you for 3 interviews about our pet of the year 2024. So can you shortly introduce yourself? So what you are doing and where you come from and so on.
Hello, Leute. Very good to be here. I'm always happy to visit Germany, and I'm glad that I can participate in Interzoo 2024. My name is Leandro Sousa. I'm a professor. I'm a biologist, and I live in Brazil, in the Xingu River, in the margins of the Xingu River. And I have developed some studies of several fish species from there, especially the Zebra-Pleco. So I came here to share a little bit of information that we are founding there about conservation and the breeding project of this unique species.
Also kommt aus Pará, aus Altamira, das ist am Xingu. Xingu, das ist ein großer südlicher Zufluss zum Amazonas. Und den Xingu, den habt ihr vielleicht schon mal irgendwas drüber gehört. Der Xingu, der ist durch einen Staudamm ja irgendwie ein bisschen aufgestaut worden. Ein bisschen, ist guter Spruch. Das ist ein riesengroßer Fluss, da fließt ungefähr 5-mal so viel Wasser wie im Rhein. Und Leandro arbeitet da. I just translated. Yeah. So, das Interessante dran sind diese Zebraharnischwelse. So the interesting thing is the Zebra-Pleco. So the Zebra-Pleco is endemic to the. So it's an endemic species. So endemic means that it's only living there. And can you explain a little bit where the Zebra-Pleco is living? So how the biotope looks like and how warm is the water and what does the Zebra-Pleco eat in the nature? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Zebra-Pleco is a very unique species because the distribution range is very limited. It inhabited the Xingu River in a stretch of only 160 kilometers long, and it lives in between rocks in the middle of this stretch. So it's not everywhere that you find the zebra on this stretch of the river. So you have special islands, underwater islands with piled big boulders, rocks stacked, and then with fissures, and the zebra lives inside these fissures. The water is very warm for even for a tropical river. Is the average 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. The lowest I measured was 27.5 or something like this. And it's a fish that's not herbivore. It's omnivore with a little bit of carnivore tendency. So it always happen associated with freshwater sponges, and they eat a little bit of the sponges and also the invertebrates that are in symbiosis with the sponges. So when you put the rocks apart, you can see the sponges and a lot of insect larvae, some mollusks and some worms, and they feed on them mainly.
So do you also need sponges to keep them in the lab?
Yeah, no. I tried once, but sponges are filtrators, so they need dirty water. So if your tank is clean, you cannot have sponges, unfortunately.
Okay, but otherwise it would be a funny thing if you had the whole chain of supply for the Zebra-Pleco over there. So I told you, we already talked about that. You keep them in the lab. So why do you keep them in the lab? Because as we know, taking Zebra-Plecos from the wild in Brazil is forbidden, and in Brazil by national law it's not allowed to keep any Zebra-Plecos at home. So why do you have Zebra-Plecos in your lab?
Yeah, I only keep Zebra-Plecos on the university lab, so it's we have a scientific permit to breed them, and our specimens came from seizures of IBAMA and the Federal Police of Brazil. So fishes that were being smuggled, and they caught it, and then they bring to us, and so we can do studies on biology, behavior, and nutrition, and several things. So that's why we have them. We work together with the authorities, and we use those fish to improve our knowledge, and perhaps in the near future we can legalize the commercial breeding in Brazil, because in Brazil I think is the only country in the world that you cannot have the zebra. So the hobbyists in Brazil, they are not allowed to have the fish.
So, but everywhere in the world around Brazil, even if they follow the CITES regulations. So CITES regulations are regulations that said if an animal or a plant is in a certain appendix of a CITES, then it's illegal to keep them, or it's legal, or you need a permit, or you need to register, or you need to have a certification of origin for these animals. But national law, like in Brazil, goes over international law, and it can be stricter than the international law. Okay, so in Germany it's allowed to keep Zebra-Plecos, but the Zebra-Plecos are bred, because it's not allowed at the moment to take Zebra-Plecos from Brazil. So every Zebra-Pleco that is advertised in Germany as a wild catch at the moment is illegal by definition. Yeah. And you thought you could probably donate them to breeding projects. And my question is, how many do you have to start a breeding project? Or how many do you need, and how many do you have in your lab?
We have now more than 2,000 specimens from the wild, so F0. We already have produced around 500 F1s that were born there. We don't produce more because we don't have where to put them. And I think if we deliver some fish to some Brazilian breeders, they will do a good job. So if you can start a breeding project with 10, 20 specimens. Depends on the size of the company or the breeder, how many tanks they have. But this is still on the ongoing project. So I have to convince Brazilian authorities that this is a viable project. And I think in the future, 5 years, 10 years from now, maybe we succeed to do that.
That is interesting. So when you keep them in the lab, we have here a tank at the Interso booth of the ZZF, which is set up with huge stones and crevices in between where the zebrafish live. But I think you don't have these big tanks in your lab for every zebra. Pleco. So how is your setup? Do you have a gravel on the ground? Do you have stones inside? Do you have caves inside? What's it? Can you please explain a little bit?
Sure. We have two kinds of tanks there. We have a show tank that's similar to what you have here. So for everybody that wants to know the fish and the habitats, they can go there and see. But that's not a breeding tank. So we do not put caves on it, only the rocks and sand and some fishes, so people can see what would be how they live in nature. For our breeding system, we use very simple setups. It's a bare bottom tank with a cave and some places for the females to hide. The male usually stays on the cave, and when the female wants, she visits the male, and then they spawn. We try sometimes with only a couple, and some tanks we have a trio, and some tanks we have a community of 10 zebras, and then we are just checking which one works the best.
And so, how old are they when they start to breed? So I think in Germany, the most people say it takes 2 to 3 years until they are mature, but they can live quite a long time. So Hans Evers, he wrote in the DATS magazine that they can reach more than 50 years. And yesterday we had someone who told us that they could be even older, that they could be more than 20 years and still actively breeding. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think that 2 years is a good number. It's a right number when the most of the babies are mature already. So I think in the literature, it's said that in 2.5 years, all specimens are adults that were born. And we are finding that sometimes a 1 year old male is already with the gonads mature. But not necessarily they will behave like spawning, but they already have some capability. So I think in 2 years you have mature individuals, and they can live more than 20 years, I guess, if no predators and you take good care. In aquarium, I can see fish with very, very old ages. Our fish, we are still a young facility. We start the breeding project in 2014, and we have some specimens that are still alive. So 10 years, but most of our specimens, I think, are around 5 to 8 years of the wild specimens we have, and they're in their peak of.
How do you get them in breeding conditions? What would you do to get them in breeding conditions? And do you change the food, or do you apply some water change? How are you getting them to spawn?
That's a very interesting question. We try not to. We do not change our water system. We feed them regularly with dry food mainly, and. But one interesting thing is we are on the margins of the Xingu River. So when the season changes, or the temperature change, the light time change, so maybe they can feel that out. They still can feel that. There is increase. They breed all year long, but in some months they breed more. When the rain starts, they breed more than it's not raining. So I think they follow more or less the regime that were used to in the nature.
So do you use Xingu water when your lab is near the Xingu, at the margin of the Xingu? So it would be easy just to install a pump and to pump in the Xingu water through your tanks?
We did that for some time, but it's not good because we introduced a lot of parasites on the river. So we tried to filter it mechanically, and then ozone and filtrations, but the rate of disease was very high. And after that we changed to well water from the ground, and then all these problems stopped. So and the well water, they differ a little bit, so they are not exactly like the water from the Xingu, but they have no problem with that.
So the well water should be really soft in the Xingu, is it? How many microsiemens, or do you know a little bit?
Yeah. The Xingu water is 20 microsiemens. It's very almost distilled water, so there are no much minerals on it. So it's very soft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
pH around 7, 6.5, 7. But if you have a constant pH, I think they can cope with 8 until 8. I know some breeders that keep them at 8, constant 8, and they are fine also.
Yeah, that's what physiology papers also say, that the pH isn't a big problem because they can regulate in a relatively wide range from 6 to 8 or even 9 or so. Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, so what do you get enough students that like to work with fish? Because when I know from my career at the university, most of the people want to work with other animals than fish.
No, there we have lucky a lot of students who wants to work with fish, because in the Amazon everybody loves fish. Also, most people know fish as food, but there is a history of ornamental fishery in Altamira, in the Xingu, so we can attract a lot of students to work with fish. So it's a fancy animal.
So yeah, fishermen and fishing, that's another good point to start with. When I visited Altamira in December 2019, I figured out that there are a lot of fishermen that have these well, not very deep plastic sheets all around filled with catfish. What catfish are caught in Altamira? So what is the main fish they catch? Do you have a little bit for us?
Fish for food, you mean?
Fish for food?
Yeah.
No, not fish for food.
Fish.
Ornamental
Ornamental fish. Yeah. The main target group is the Plecos in Altamira, in the Xingu River, and they use plastic trays to stack and transport the Plecos. I think that's what you're talking about, right? Yeah, there's an interesting way that they developed to collect the fish and hold the fish and bring to the city, and then the city they change water. They usually do not feed them. They don't know how to feed the fish, and then they just send to the next chain that is Belém, a company in Belém that treats a little bit the fish and then export it.
So how many fish are caught in Altamira? How many Plecos do they catch? So every week or so. Do you have a rough estimate?
It can varies a lot. Depends on the orders, because the fisherman only goes to the river when somebody orders a quantity. So let's say a company orders 2,000 L18 Barensis chantellos. Then the fisherman will go, spend 1 or 2 days the field, and then they collect. Before the dam was that easy. The chantellos were very common all over the Xingu. Now, chantellos needs a very strong flow, and then in the reservoir they disappeared. So if the fisherman needs to collect chantellos now, they need to go farther away. So it's taking longer to collect. But the numbers vary a lot. So it can be 2,000, can be 10,000, or only 200, depends on the species and in the orders.
So how are they transported to? You mentioned Belém, which is quite a 2-hour flight or something.
Yeah, 1 hour flight.
Or 1 hour flight
800
and
kilometers.
800 kilometers. Yeah. So how are they transported there? By boat or
by truck? So there's a company or some companies in Altamira that receive the fish from the fishermen. Then they pack it, and every week, once a week, a truck comes and then gets the boxes, and 20 hours drive arrives in Belém.
So, and in Belém, they go to the exporter, and then they are packed on and fly to Europe.
Yeah, I think usually they do a quarantine there, and then they feed sometimes the fish depending on the quarantine time. So they take care of the fish, treat the diseases, and then when it's ready, they go to the list, and then people around the world see the fish in the list and make the orders, and they ship it. I think that's how they do.
How long do they take from Belém to, say, Frankfurt or Madrid or something?
I think it also may vary depending on the customs, depending on each airport has their own regulations. but I think they are packed to last at least 2 days, sometimes 3 days. It depends on the history of that path. So I think every company probably has their way to do it. But I think 2 days at most.
So thank you. That gave quite a good impression of what you're doing at Altamira, and so I would like to thank you for the interview.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It was being wonderful to be here, to make a lot of connections, and it's always good to be around fish people and the Dankeschön.
Das war myfish.org aus Freude an Aquaristik. Alle weiteren Informationen mit Bildern und Links findest du wie immer unter www.my-fish.org. Wir hören uns nächsten Samstag wieder. Danke und tschüss, euer Lukas.